So it's 11:16. We'll give it another minute or two here. I just want to make sure that everything's on, that looks okay, and we can get rolling. All right. So, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to my presentation today. So really what we're hoping to talk about is some effective strategies for managing food allergy. So my name is Joey DeGangi. I'm the CEO and founder of AssureTech. It's a software startup from Pennsylvania, and I have a life-threatening food allergy. And so what I want to do is I want to really look at some of the different experiences from throughout my life and talk about some of the strategies that I've kind of learned over time that have been really effective for helping me stay safe, manage the condition, as well as some of the things that I've done that were absolutely mistakes, and what we can learn from that, and kind of build strategies around trying to avoid some of those missteps that I've made. As we kind of get started, I'll give a little bit of my background. So again, I'm a lifelong food allergy sufferer. So I have peanut tree nut food allergy. We found out from the age I was 8 months old. I was accidentally given peanut butter ice cream, and pretty much from that point on, everything has been kind of learning on the go, all different ways to try to stay as safe as possible with the condition. As I got older and as I got out of college, I decided after a couple particular incidents, one of those that I'll talk about today, I really wanted to dedicate my life towards helping people manage the condition better. And one of the most important ways that I think I can help is by sharing my stories and being able to kind of help people learn from some of the things I've experienced throughout my life. And so, with that in mind, I want to talk about what what we're trying to accomplish here today during this talk. So, if there's one thing that I think everybody can really walk away with and remember, is that so much of what helps you prepare for an allergic reaction is done ahead of time. There's a lot of strategies, a lot of things that you can be working on and thinking about, that just the act of even having those conversations and being aware of certain things is going to help you have a better chance of having a positive outcome, should an emergency happen. And so that's really that's kind of the big takeaway from everything we're talking about here today. And with that, I'm going to tell a story of a very probably one of the scariest experiences of my entire life. It was an allergic reaction in a foreign country, and I want to talk about why I was able to have, why it turned out okay in the end for me. The first thing I want to look at is some of the good decisions I made, and you'll see that some of them were made earlier that day, and some of them were made even months ahead of time, leading up to before I had that accidental exposure to my allergens. So looking at some of those good decisions that really helped position me for a safe outcome. But then there were a lot of things, again, that I didn't do well. And, I was fortunate enough that I didn't have to pay the price that in that situation, I had the support I needed, just thanks to good fortune. And so looking back after that is really when I decided that, I needed to look at why, look at the things I did right, build strategies around that to make sure that I could consistently do those to make sure I was safe. But then also looking at the things that I didn't do well, and kind of trying to see if I can learn from that. And that's kind of, again, just to help frame some of the conversation we're going to have today. So with that, I want to share a very particular experience just to kind of set the scene. In 2018, I graduated from college, and I was preparing to start my adult and professional life. And with that, I had an opportunity to live and work abroad in Taiwan. That's over in Asia. And so I had this great career opportunity, and I was going over. And so at this point, I had never been out of the country before. So everything was a brand new experience for me. Everything from, just getting, living on my own, having that whole adult experience, but also the managing my allergy. I had never even thought about having to communicate my food allergy in a different country before, and that was a really big learning experience for me. Um, and so there were some different moments, some red flags here and there. For example, food allergy awareness isn't the same depending on where you go. Certain areas of the world where food allergies aren't quite as prevalent, you find that the awareness. Some people may not have heard of food allergies, and definitely making sure you have the translations and things like that prepared to communicate the complexities of things like cross contamination. Um, so that's a really, that's kind of one example of some of the learning curve. The really the allergic reaction that shaped a lot of my professional and personal life, though, happened one morning. It was about a month or so after I'd gotten there, and that's the story that I really want to share with you all today. And that's kind of what we're gonna really dive into. So after being in Taiwan for a little bit, I went over. Like I said, I graduated. I got to start my career, and so I went over with myself and my colleague who graduated same university as I did, same age, and we were both starting in the marketing department for the company in Taiwan, KDAM Mobile. And so my colleague and friend's name was Chris. So Chris and I, by this point into our journey, we have a pretty great routine set up. Every morning we would wake up, we would go to the gym for about an hour and a half, get ready for work. Then we would go to one of a few different breakfast shops and head up to our building to start the work day. So one Monday morning, just like every other week, we start off the same way, go to the gym, and we go to our breakfast stand of choice that day. And for whatever reason, the shop was running a little bit behind, so they were a little bit stressed on time, and they happened to run out of what I was usually comfortable ordering. But I showed them my little translation card, and they gave me, it was a new food, something we'd never had before. It was a kind of like a bun with meat and different spices in it. And so we took that, went back up to our work, and we we kind of sat down, started off our work week. And from the first bite I have that new meat bun, I could tell something was immediately wrong. I had a very kind of like a tingly, painful sensation in my mouth, and I started to feel a little sick to my stomach. And I look over, Chris is sitting right next to me. And I'm like, Chris, what did you think of that sandwich? He's like, it was okay. And I'm like, I really did not like that. And he's like, oh, well, I'm sorry to hear that. And I'm like, no, I really didn't like that. He's like, oh, do you think it's? I said, I'm not sure, but just could you keep an eye on me? That was all. That was where I left it because I wanted to just kind of see what was happening. At this point, I didn't have hives. All it was just a funny feeling in my mouth and upset stomach, which could have. I wasn't sure if it was just me adjusting to a brand new food, or if it was or if it was because of something worse. And so I just asked my friend to keep an eye on me. And so we go about our morning. I'm just miserable. I'm just trying to get through it. I was debating even just going home at lunch. I wasn't doing very well. And so we go into our Monday morning meeting. This whole experience happened over the course of about 35 to 40 minutes. So after about 20 minutes, just kind of sitting there, we go into our Monday morning meeting. We go into the conference room, put the lights out, put the presentation on. And so we're in there, the lights are out, and it gets to my point to speak. And I try to start speaking, and I can't get the words out. I'm very short of breath. I'm just trying to get the be able to communicate and just say what's going on, and I can't find the words. And fortunately, Chris is he was there. He's like, hey, let's put the lights on. And I'll never forget his face when the lights went on. His eyes shot up, and he's like, oh, we need to go to the hospital. I'm like, yeah, I think we do. And by this point, my face was very red, very swollen, covered in hives. It was getting worse really quick at that point. So it was myself, Chris, and two colleagues. We leave the meeting room. We make our way downstairs to the lobby, and we get to the lobby. And I just remember this feeling of just panic, and realizing I was walking out of the office with a purpose, but I had virtually no idea where I was going. It was a new city. I didn't know where the hospital was. I didn't know how I would get there. I mean, we rode bikes to work, so I didn't know how. I was in no shape to ride a bike. I didn't know how I was going to get to to a hospital if I find one. And that's when I realized the two coworkers that came down with us, one of them had a car. They were both familiar with where the hospital was, and I was going to be okay. So they put me into the car. We drive over to the hospital, which thankfully enough was maybe about 3 blocks away. So it was very close proximity to where we needed to be. They took me into the hospital, and again, as I'm walking in, another just kind of very disorienting moment when I realized as I'm walking up to the counter, still short of breath, and then realizing I'm not quite sure how to ask for help. I don't speak any Chinese. I wasn't sure uh, if even the people I was going to be speaking with and asking for help, I didn't know if they were going to be familiar with food allergy. I really I didn't know what to do. And again, this is where I was so fortunate enough to have the two coworkers that came with me. I was really part of a great team there. They translated on my behalf. They took a few hours off from work even to sit there, translate, talk to the doctors, explain what was going on, and really just I had so much support in that moment. Um, After they released me from the hospital, I was worried about in case there was any, any if the reaction came back at all. So what they did is they prepared a little bed even for me in the office. They had a couch. Someone had a pillow that they had for like their lower back, and someone else had a blanket. And they let me kind of like just relax and lay down there for the rest of the day to keep an eye on me. We got back to the apartment. Chris was one floor above me, and throughout the night, my friend would just come down and check on me to make sure I was okay. Really fortunate to have all of those things in my life. And I remember that night just kind of thinking, what if this had been the weekend? Here I am. I benefited from having so many people come to my aid in this crisis and not realizing, you know, had it been different circumstances, I don't know what I would have done. I don't know how I would have found the hospital, gotten to the hospital, or asked for medical assistance once I got there. And so it was this really, kind of scary moment. And so that's what got me thinking about, here were some of the shortcomings I had. Here were areas that I could improve the way I take care of the condition. So I'm not, beholden to good fortune, which is what saved me that day, but making sure that I can kind of take control over the situation, understand how to, get that sort of support and control the situation a little bit more. And again, this is why I talk about how many things, when it comes to an emergency circumstance, how much of it depends on what you do ahead of time. And this is the part now where I'll kind of break down, again, the two categories I talked about. We have the good decisions I made ahead of time and the things that I didn't do ahead of time, but should be doing going forward. So if we start with talking about the good decisions that were made prior to that day, or prior to that moment, rather. First things first is I did have an auto-injector with me. Now, you'll see the auto-injector show up on the list of things I didn't do right that day as well, because that particular day I only had one. There had been a mistake. I had two different bags, and for whatever reason, I didn't bring the second auto-injector with me. But having that first one was obviously better than nothing. And that's why the name of this presentation is Beyond Carrying the Auto-Injector, because the very first thing, the top of the list thing that you need to be doing is always carrying two auto injectors with you at all times. That should be seen as a bare minimum strategy and practice for managing your condition. That's paramount, really, really important. I'll mention it a few more times, but have to start there. The other thing I did a good job with was advocating for myself. And so there's two particular points of that experience that I really want to talk about. So the first was having a friend like Chris who was there, who was aware of my food allergy. Before, as I was packing for the trip to Taiwan, preparing for this work experience, I knew that I was gonna, need to have some allies on my side just in case an emergency happens. So the first day I got over there, I connected with Chris. We found our apartment, everything like that. I made sure to talk to him. He knew I had a food allergy, but at this point, we didn't know each other as well as we did now. So I had to explain, okay, here's the signs and symptoms that you should be looking for. Here's what to do during an emergency. Here's, cross contamination. If you hear me saying, I'm worried about that, or the things I'm going to be asking for help with. I carry AllVQ. I had the trainer AllVQ, and I showed him, here's how you inject it. I'll always have it in either my right hand pocket, or I'll have it in my bag here. Just trying to let him know where you find the medication, doing all of these steps to make sure I had someone that could watch my back. And then the other part was making sure, so when I started my career at KA Mobile, making sure that my coworkers were aware of what's going on. And the story there is really incredible, especially the more I look back at it and think about how special a situation that was. So when I got to the office, at this point, I made sure that the person who I knew I was going to be spending a lot of my time with, Chris, was aware and able to advocate on my behalf. But then at the same time, I wanted to make sure that my colleagues had some idea of what was going on. I wanted to be, just to let them know what my food allergy was. And so I communicated with two of the managers in the department, and said, hey, I have a food allergy. And they said, oh, that's really important. Your boss in the United States had mentioned that you had this. We want to make sure that you have a chance and a platform to share this with our team. And I'm like, wow, that's a great proactive step towards creating a safer environment for someone with food allergies. And so I thought that was a great idea. And so one day, I think it was my second or third day at work, right after lunch break, they say, okay, everybody's in the next room. We're going to let you kind of demonstrate and talk about your food allergy. I'm like, oh, the next room. That's a bigger area than I was expecting for just kind of our small 20-person marketing team. And so I go in, and every single person in the office, our department and other, that wasn't in a meeting or had something already scheduled was in that room. And they explained to me they want to make sure that anywhere I am in the office that I can feel comfortable, that people are going to, if they see me having trouble, that they'll know what to look for and that they'll know how to help me. It was, just unbelievable support. You can see the picture off to the right there. Oops, sorry, bro, I'm covering a little bit. That was my colleague Isu. And so what happened was they gave me a platform. They gave me a chance to speak about my food allergy, share the signs and symptoms, talk about, cross-contamination. And my colleague was right there to translate everything into Chinese to make sure that every single person in the office was very familiar with the medical condition and what to do during a crisis in case my immediate colleagues weren't in the vicinity if something should ever happen. And with that, you can see she's holding the AviQ trainer, and we did it right there in front of everyone. And it was just this great opportunity to share what to do with the food allergy. And so advocating for yourself obviously is really important. I think that's one of the most critical things you can do, because the more people you have that can help you during an emergency, the better. And with respect to advocacy, obviously my situation and having that level of support for my teammates was a very special situation. I know that's not going to always be the case depending on where people are, work, college, school, K-12. And by the same token, not everybody's comfortable. I know I certainly, I wasn't volunteering myself to go speak in front of the whole company. They were kind enough to kind of set that up and gave me a platform, but that probably wouldn't have been the sort of thing I would have thought to ask for myself. And so I'll kind of talk a little bit later about what self-advocacy looks like at different levels, and you have to kind of find what you're most comfortable with. So you can feel confident when you try to let people know what your food allergy involves and how they can support you with that. And then the final thing that was really important was making sure that you're aware of some of the signs and symptoms. So like I said, my experience was over the course of about 35 or 40 minutes. During the early parts, I wasn't my initial reaction wasn't this is definitely an allergic reaction. We have to go to the hospital right away. There were some warning flags, absolutely. The feeling in the mouth, the stomach condition, all of that was a red flag and an indicator that something might be going wrong, but it wasn't like that immediate, like that huge sign right in your face. So what was really good was that I was able to, I recognized early on we might have a problem, and then could go to Chris, my colleague, and someone that I had, kind of self-advocated and explained my food allergy to ahead of time, and say, hey, can you keep an eye on me? And you think to when we did finally realize that I was having a full-on allergic reaction, I was short of breath. I was having trouble being able to communicate. So the fact that I had people that already knew what my food allergy was and how to handle it during an emergency, and I asked them to keep an extra eye on things ahead of time, those save precious minutes during that emergency situation. So those are some really important strategies that I did take advantage of in that moment. And now we turn to some of the things where I benefited from just luck, whatever you want to call it. But I was very fortunate enough that things didn't get worse. And here are a couple, the things that we also need to pay attention to. We didn't need multiple auto injectors that day. Just by, fortunately enough, the proximity of our office to the hospital was very close. So I didn't have to pay for not having that second auto injector with me. But I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that everyone always carries at least 2 auto injectors. And the other thing is that I didn't have to communicate my condition that day, because I had advocated in the past, because it happened while I was with people that knew about my food allergy, that I was with people, that could speak Chinese and explain things to the doctors when we went to the hospital. And even if I was in the United States, when you're having trouble breathing, when panic sets in, it can be really difficult to speak even in your native tongue. So the fact that a lot of that burden wasn't on me that day was really fortunate enough, because had it been the weekend or any other point, I might not have had the tools and the resources to say, hey, I'm having an allergic reaction, here's what's going on, had it been with complete strangers, or if it was out while I was on my own doing anything else. So I was fortunate enough that didn't come up that day. And the final thing, of course, was people were able to help me find the hospital and help me get to the place I needed to be to get medical attention. And not only knowing where the hospital is, but also they knew how to get me there. They had that transportation. They had that part set up. I was really, I was very fortunate enough to have that happen that day. So what are the takeaways? The big thing is, again, building your strategy ahead of time. And this is where we can look at that whole situation and understand all of the different things that we can be talking about and preparing for ahead of time that give you the best, all the best tools at your disposal to navigate an allergic reaction. And a lot of that is, fortunately enough, it's in our power to do ahead of time. First one, no surprise, is have your epinephrine with you. Again, that's 2 auto injectors. That should be the bare minimum. And on top of not only having them with you, but also it's critical that you take proper care of them. So that means making sure they're up to date, making sure that the medication is kept at stable temperatures, because epinephrine is only good if it's in working condition and with you. It's not the same as having it out in your car, having it in a bag that's sitting out in the sun or exposed to direct sunlight even. There's all of these things that you need to do to make sure that you want the absolute best chance, like you want to have every resource on your side during that situation. And it starts with making sure you have your auto injector with you and working as properly as possible. The other thing is learning to self-advocate in a way that works for you. And so again, it is a kind of a personal situation. You have to figure out what your style of being able to communicate is and what makes you most comfortable. If you are comfortable enough and you have a work environment where you have the platform to go up and speak and share with everyone what your condition is, that's great. I mean, that was a best case scenario in my opinion. You want to be able to do that. If it's not that case, which I think is the situation in a lot of places of work, finding a way to talk to your colleagues, go ask your HR director and say, hey, here's my food allergy. What do you recommend? How can we raise the awareness in our place of work to make sure that this is safer for, in the case of a potential emergency? If we kind of take a step backwards and look at when you're in college, young adulthood, that's another place where being able to talk about your food allergy isn't always the easiest. I knew that, I lived that. And again, I think finding whatever your way is. For me, it was making sure I had good friends around me. That's really, my personal go-to strategy when it comes for getting support for your own food allergy. For me, it was my best friend and roommate, Brendan. So I had this friend, Brendan, who he was really great. Not only did he was familiar with how to use the auto injector, he knew the signs and symptoms, but beyond that, he would also help call attention to it. So we went to a small college, with very like kind of like a almost like a high school like dining hall in that you go up, you get your food, and then you're sitting or surrounded by your colleagues. It's very kind of like it's a small school feel for anyone that's been there. You kind of know what I'm talking about. So one of the things that I can never thank him enough for doing was whenever someone would come down to our lunch table, join us for a meal with something that had peanuts, he would always, in a appropriate for the setting type of way, make a lighthearted remark like, "Oh, you're trying to get Joey," or just something light, like really simple. And he told me the goal of that was he wanted to make sure that people, just making sure it's at the front of their mind. And it was great because I didn't even have, there were a lot of times I didn't even have to be the one to voice up. I had someone that had my back, was looking out for me. And what you'd see is either the person would say, "Oh, I'm sorry," and they would either move across the table so there was some more distance, or if they were, if it was a very potent, something with peanut butter or any type of nut, they would go to another table and say, "I'll catch up with you guys later." So it was great because I had, that kind of assistance, to always keep the awareness high for my food allergy. I think that's a really good strategy for anyone starting young adulthood. When you have friends like that, if you can find people that you can have in your corner, there's really no better feeling because then you feel it takes a lot of that pressure off of you and still keeps the awareness for your food allergy very high. And then if we go back even further, looking at K-12, I'm sure there's a lot of your parents that have children with food allergies. And yeah, I look back to my experience and two more great people in my life. Of course, my parents. They did a really, really amazing job of always advocating for me, always trying to make sure that I could be safe, but still included in all class activities and everything like that. Um, Really thankful for the way that they were able to help me. And it could be, big steps like meeting with school nurses and teachers before the semester even begins, coming up with a strategy and making sure that every staff member that was going to be watching over me was, very aware and familiar with, food allergies and what to look for, what to be aware of. It could be smaller things like making sure that so when we used to have the class parties and birthdays and everything, they would always stockpile the teacher right before the new school year would start with a bunch of snacks that were okay for me to eat, just in case someone ever came in with a lot, with cupcakes or anything like that, and I couldn't have one. So I would never feel completely left out, but I would always be safe. I mean, it's things like that that really, being able to have people like that in your corner at different intervals throughout your life, and being able to, to get that kind of support is just one of the best strategies, and something I think is a really big takeaway from my experience. On top of that, again, recognizing early on the signs and symptoms of a of an allergic reaction, so you can take proper precautions, even if you're not sure if what you're experiencing is a food allergy. At least recognizing, okay, this could be a food allergy, and making sure that that's on your mind, and something that you can be aware of and ask anyone that's in your corner to to kind of look out for you, and just have their eye on that. That's really important. Again, every minute counts during an emergency. So the earlier on that you can recognize that there might be something coming up, the better. Uh, and the other thing is always making sure you have a means of communication. And communication, and when I'm talking about this in emergency, that is a very, it's very broad. So communication in, if you are in a situation where as much self advocacy as you've done for yourself to prepare your friends, family, colleagues for an allergic reaction, there's still no guarantee that you're going to be around someone that you've explained all of this to. And that's why I think it's so important just having some type of strategy in mind to let people know, you know, if you're surrounded by strangers, hey, I'm having an allergic reaction. I need immediate medical attention, and being able to communicate that message. It could be anything from a medical ID to I wear a bracelet myself, something like that. But just making sure that you have a backup plan in place in case some of the other strategies aren't able to work for you in that moment. And of course, I mean, I think this kind of goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. If you're in a different country, all of that is exponentially more important because communicating anything is going to be infinitely more difficult when it's not in your native tongue. So if you're traveling, come extra prepared. And the final thing is having a good feeling for what emergency resources are going to be at your disposal. So knowing where are the hospitals, knowing how are you going to get help, how are you going to call an ambulance, how are you going to get to the hospital, whatever the case may be. That's something, at least in my life, I didn't really think about, and I couldn't believe it really looking back. But my early life, I was either in K-12 where there's almost always someone supervising you, or I was in college. Our university sits right at the bottom of the hill, and right up on the hill you can see the hospital. So I never had to think about where would I go should an emergency happen. But then realizing once I was out on my own, starting my professional and adult life, I'm like, oh, how could I ever travel somewhere and not be thinking ahead of time? What do I do? If an emergency happens. So things like that are really important. And again, these strategies, unfortunately, there's always going to be unknowns. There's always going to be circumstances that you weren't prepared for. But I would argue that I think even just the act of thinking about some of these different things ahead of time is going to put you in a better position because you've already been in that mindset of trying to prepare for some of these what if scenarios. I think that's going to really give you just a better chance of being able to get the support that you need during an emergency. And those items there really are going to, I think that is, probably the most important things that you can do for yourself with trying to effectively manage your food allergy. I'll keep all of these slides. I'll upload them to my speaker portal afterwards, just in case anyone wants kind of the summary of what we talked about. But my goal of really all of this is that obviously this was a terrifying experience, but I really hope that some good is able to come from everything that's happened in that story. And one of the pieces that I do like to be able to tell is that story, besides giving me something I can share with other people and hopefully help other people learn from my experiences, there's kind of another piece to it. And this is where I talked very early on about how my professional life was very much shaped by that event as well. So once that event, once I had that allergic reaction, I knew I was going to be in Taiwan for 6 more months. And I knew the strategies and the things I was doing were incomplete. It wasn't, it clearly, I wanted to have something in place that could help myself and others more, should an emergency happen. And so right after, when I was able to come back into work, I started researching what it would take to learn to build software that would be able to help people during a crisis. I had the benefit, I was working at a software company where I could ask some of the different engineers there for tips, advice, and try to learn as I went, and figure out how can I make sure that myself and anyone else that has a food allergy has as many helpful things in place at once. And that was kind of the mission that drove really a lot of the all of the work that I've done since that point. And I was fortunate. So I built at the time a basic translation app with kind of a rudimentary design. It was my first attempt at really trying to build software that could translate my food allergy in a number of different languages, display a help message, and automatically find a hospital during an emergency. And so I built this initial tool, at the computer there. I was using this, and it was great. The reception that we got for what I was doing, I started to share that with other people in the food allergy community, and the takeaway was that people they thought it was a really good idea. And I started to make some tweaks here and there, and got some more validation. People just saying they appreciated and thought what I was doing was important because they had seen similar experiences in their own life. Once that progress started to happen, KDM Mobile, the company I was working for in Taiwan, actually decided to partner with me, and they gave the project to their team of 30 or so engineers and designers who took my basic ideas and put together what we've called the Epicenter app, which is something I'm really proud to introduce. I mean, some of the strategies I'm talking about, there's all different ways to kind of go about getting that help during an emergency. This was my best attempt at trying to help people get as much of that in at their disposal as possible. So the app that we put our heads together and we're able to build is able to call 911 or the local emergency service number automatically with just a press of a button. You can call for help. You can send a text message alert to your emergency contacts along with your live GPS location. It'll locate the nearest hospitals relative to your location. It has a medical ID that you can display in that moment. And we partnered with a great company. If anyone knows Equal Eats and Kyle Dine, they are one of the best food allergy translation companies, and we incorporated their translations to the point where the app is able to support 500 different allergens in 50 languages, and then ask for help. That was our kind of our best our best attempt at trying to help put as many important resources at your disposal as possible. To kind of build off of some of those strategies and shortcomings that I've recognized from my own experience with food allergies. And so that kind of wraps up the part where I want to talk about what what I've experienced and what lessons can be learned. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the computer here, look at any questions that any of you might have asked during the presentation, start to answer them. And if anyone has any other questions, comments, or anything like that you want to talk about, I'd be more than happy to kind of discuss further. Thank you. Hold on, I'm back to. Okay, so I'm here now. We're gonna pull up some of these questions. I'm gonna go back through everything here, and then we can go from there. So I see one question about access to the presentation. Again, I'm going to be uploading this as a PDF afterwards, so I'll make sure everyone has access to that. Absolutely. Oh, I see Kyle from Equal Eats. Thank you. So I see we have a comment here just talking kind of about just kind of how it is absolutely a learning experience being a food allergy family. I can say that based on what my parents have shared with me, and for myself now kind of taking on as the primary person that holds responsibility for my allergy. Yeah, it is a lot of kind of just learning on the go. And one of the things I'm always really fortunate, to kind of, or not fortunate, thankful rather, to see is just how many great online resources there are. I mean, there's so many different great blogs, podcasts, Facebook groups. I mean, there are just so many channels for support out there right now. This conference obviously is a great example. Like, there's just so many things in the community. It's definitely an uphill battle. You're always learning and finding out new situations, but I think it is really nice that you don't have to do it all alone. There's so many great resources out there. So I'm looking. I'm not seeing any other comments or anything like that. But so obviously I'll stay on here. I know we have some time slotted, so I'll make myself completely available. But I also want to mention, so I'm here. AssureTech, my software startup, we do have an exhibitor booth. So if there's any questions that anyone out there would feel more comfortable asking me, either on their own, or they want to ask questions about, something that just comes to mind later, they want to know about the app, anything, I'll be here all day today and all day tomorrow throughout the duration of the presentation. And when I upload the slides, my contact information will be on there as well. Please always feel free to shoot me an email, anything like that. Always happy to offer any help I can. Okay. All right. So I see a couple people saying they're going to hop off. I know, unfortunately, because of our little bit of a late start time, I know there's other presentations and other things like that. So I know some of you are going to be hopping off. It was great to see you all, and hopefully we can touch base. Oh, Alexandra, thank you so much. I hope it was helpful. Thank you. All right. And so again, I think what might be helpful, just So again, in case anything comes to mind later, anything like that, I'm gonna put the name of how you'd be able to find me through the exhibitor booth. I'll put some private chat times and stuff like that in there, but I'll also include the booth in case anyone reached out at a time when we don't have something slot up. Just again, so everyone is able to find me more easily. And then that's also where I'll put the slides as well. So anyone that wants to download that afterwards will have that access. So there's the name of booth that we have available. Again, anything I can offer to help, please always reach out. And then if there's no other questions, 11:59, we'll probably wrap things up here at 12 because I know everybody's got different presentations or lunch to go to. Don't want to hold up too much of your time. All right. Everyone that's still listening, it's been a pleasure. Really nice to be able to share some of my experiences with you all. Looking forward to hopefully getting a chance to talk with some of you following this presentation. I will be opening up the booth for live in case anyone wants to follow up later. Take care, everyone. Bye.